Let's go back to one of our lead stories now. Yet another blow for Cricket South Africa. Yesterday, news coming through that its title sponsor, Standard Bank, announced it will not be renewing its sponsorship for the men's national team when it's up for renewal next year. This, of course, following the resignation of a few of the board members, including Iqbal Khan and Shirley Zinn, both expressing unhappiness with the organization's leadership. And, of course, news also coming through with the suspension of the CEO, Thabang Morwe. Now, for more, I'm joined by independent newspapers cricket writer Stuart Hess. Stuart, thank you so much for coming in this morning. It has been a hell of a week for cricket journalists across South Africa. Some would say triggered by you making it public that your accreditation had been revoked. And it came as a shock to many, especially seeing as you've been one of the country's leading cricket writers for some time. You've been working as a journalist for, 2 decades now. Give us a sense of what kind of week it's been covering all of this goings on at CSA.
Well, to put it mildly, it's been interesting. Just the way things have unfolded so rapidly with regard to Cricket South Africa. I mean, there's been so much stuff taking place below the surface at the organisation, and when this happened with 4 of us, there was a 5th gentleman, Ken Borland, but he's been away. But when it happened with the 4 of us, I think it certainly surprised me. I know it surprised the other 3 down in Cape Town, and so it's been a really interesting week, and it has been just rolling and rolling continuously at such a rapid pace. So it's taken all of us by surprise, and as I said, been an interesting week.
Indeed. Now, you would be the first to say that you don't want to be at the centre of a story.
Quite right.
And while some who maybe do not follow the goings on in cricket might say, gosh, all of this happened because they revoked the accreditation of journalists, that is actually not the case. There have been red flags as to there being some issues at the running of CSA for some time now. What for you has been the biggest red flag?
The major red flag has been the sort of deliberate split that has been caused by the now suspended CEO Thabang Morwe with the South African Cricketers Association, who represent all the players, and that sort of started before he was even permanently appointed as CEO. So even when he was in an interim capacity as Chief Executive of Cricket South Africa, he drove this wedge between CSA and the players. And the question that you've got to ask yourself is why? And at that, the reason he gave was that he didn't see the importance of a union, making demands the way they did. The problem is the union is the players. These are the people that go into the field. These are the people that the public pay to go and watch perform. And when you drive a wedge between your organisation that oversees the sport and the people that play the sport, well, you've got major problems. And it has just been, just bad tactical decision on his part. He never tried to build a relationship with the Players Association, and it was very surprising to me that he did that from the offset.
And it also speaks to what became a bigger issue around the balance of power, because it seems that that balance was diminishing as the CEO's office was being given more and more power away from the board.
Yeah, so at some point in the middle of this year, the board and Thabang Morwe got into talks, as he called it at the time, about assuming more responsibility for what was going on in the office and the overall running of cricket. And in Morwe's words, he took more responsibility on his shoulders, and it was agreed by the board that he could do so. Ever since that took place somewhere around late July, early August of this year, cricket has kind of gone through it rapidly. Just the leadership of CSA the board had not taken any responsibility. Everything laid on Morwe's shoulders. He made decisions, and when those decisions were not doing good for South African cricket, when he couldn't appoint a director of cricket, well, we ended up in problems where we are now.
I want us then also now just to focus on the statements that have come out from 3 major stakeholders in cricket over the last 48 hours, I think it is, so that there's not this belief that this could just be the work of some power battle that's happening behind the scenes. There's some serious issues and concerns that have been raised by various stakeholders, and none more so by the SA Cricketers Association's Chief Executive, Tony Irish. Let's look at that quote now. They sent out a statement saying, quote, extremely poor leadership, both at operational level and at board level, is what has got cricket into this disastrous position. It goes further to say, no one on the board can say that he or she was unaware of what has been unfolding over at least the last year. It has all been happening in many respects, even publicly, under the board's very nose, and in some instances with the board's support. So as much as Thabang Morwe has been front and centre, the SA Cricketers Association saying that the board have some serious questions to answer as well.
Correct, because the board empowered Thabang Morwe to do this. So the board, and publicly, you know, board members have said that, you know, we've got oversight, so when we want to, we can call him in. That's what we were all told. Well, clearly, you've allowed this man to have the amount of power. You gave him the responsibility, as they put it. Once you've done that and you say that you've got oversight, well, then you must, you know, enforce that oversight. And that clearly wasn't done, because if it was, we wouldn't be sitting in the situation where we are now, where you've got the headline sponsor, Standard Bank, walking away. You've the wedge between CSA and the players, and I keep going back to that because that's the most important, but you're just widened. You know, there's a chasm now between those two bodies. And, you know, once that occurred, at some point, someone on the board needs to turn around, and it was a 12-member board. Someone on the board needs to turn around and go, excuse me, but what are you doing? And no one appeared to do that, and we ended up in the situation that we are in now.
Well, speaking of Standard Bank, and I think that really sends shockwaves across the sports world, and not just cricket. Standard Bank releasing a statement yesterday from the desk of Tulani Sibeko, who is the Standard Bank Group Chief Marketing and Communications Officer, and his quote reads there, Standard Bank is committed to upholding the highest levels of leadership, integrity and governance in light of recent developments at CSA, which are a culmination of long-standing problems which have damaged Standard Bank's reputation. It has decided not to renew its partnership with CSA. We wish the national team well in the years ahead. And they go further to say that the teams there have made South Africans immensely proud over the years, and we are grateful to have been a part of their journey. Now, we are old enough to remember that in our lifetime, this is not the first time Standard Bank has decided to desert cricket. And some people might not remember that. So this is not a decision that they would have taken lightly, because for all intents and purposes, to a certain extent, they've been there before. I'd like to ask you the question. I heard our colleague Sinikiwe Qabanisa earlier said that this is, for him, the biggest implosion inside a sports federation he's seen in South African sport in the last 20 years. Some might say, but how? What about what happened when Gerald Majola was at the helm of CSA? Is it fair to make a comparison?
It's gotten worse. I think this is worse than the Gerald Majola situation 10 years ago, because the thing that happened was there was a commission of inquiry that took place with Gerald Majola and investigated that. That commission of inquiry, which was run by Judge Chris Nicholson, made recommendations. It's only 7 years ago that that report came out. And the fact that cricket sits in this situation now just shows how board members, especially the independents in this case, just abdicated their responsibilities. I mean, it was all there in front of them. It said, here you go, this is how you run it, this is what will make you a better organization. So it sat there with them. 7 years later, to be sitting in this position right now, again, it just shows an incredible sort of lack of thought. I think it shows how they've just abdicated their responsibilities. And to have Standard Bank walk away is massive, because the Standard Bank situation is, the context is that there's not a lot of companies coming on board and supporting cricket at the moment. Cricket South Africa has struggled to get sponsors in the last 2 years. Their major sponsor is now just gone. Cheers, we're done. And how are you going to get, if Morewa stays, or if this board stays on, how's anyone going to trust them to, run the sport properly? And that's the biggest concern here. And just to add, is that this decision doesn't just affect the players who we see on TV.
I was going to say that.
It runs all the way through. There's coaches involved, there's ground staff involved.
Important development programs that spread the gospel of cricket.
Correct, huge development programs, and just ordinary folk at stadiums that just keep the lights on, that sweep the stairs, that sort of thing. And that's where this is going to impact enormously. And, you know, Cricket South Africa and their board of directors and the presidents of all these unions need to take an enormous amount of responsibility for allowing this to happen.
Stuart, we're going to leave it there. A big meeting, we think, still expected this afternoon. The CEO has been suspended. He was supposed to have a press conference after this meeting. Just very quickly, are we expecting that still to happen?
Well, the last update that we all had, which was late last night, was that the meeting is still going ahead in Johannesburg at the airport this afternoon. So, you know, we're all going to trek out there and see.
So perhaps it's easy in and easy out because they're right there at the airport. Thank you so much. Stuart Hess, cricket writer for independent newspapers. Follow him on Twitter if you want to also keep abreast of what's probably going to be a very interesting day, although I don't know how much more interesting it could possibly get. Thank you so much for joining us.